So next speaker, Amy Farah Weiss got her start in San Francisco politics in 2011 when she was allowed to when she joined her neighbors in pushing back against a Chase Bank that was allowed to break the law in 2 ways in order to push out 2 local businesses without due process of community input. Shortly after, Amy founded a non-profit in 2011 called Neighbors Enriching Divisadero in order to proactively support inclusive, culturally enriching, and sustainable development in her neighborhood and through citywide policy. Amy revolutionized San Francisco democracy over the last year by forming a coalition of grassroots candidates to challenge Ed Lee in the 2015 mayor's race.
Good afternoon, Bay Area for Bernie. How many people here have had enough of pay-to-play politics? How many people have had enough of elected officials that serve the needs of corporate interests over the needs of people and planet? So join me in this little ditty. We're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. We're not gonna take it anymore. Now those are the words of Twisted Sister, but they might as well be the words of Thomas Jefferson. Because Thomas Jefferson said that every new generation needs a political revolution, did he not? And Thomas Jefferson also said that banks that are for profit are more dangerous to us than standing armies. And that's why in 2011, when a Chase Bank was able, with the blessing of Ed Lee's administration, to break the law in 2 ways in my neighborhood, to push out 2 local businesses, one of them being really the epitome of the American dream in San Francisco, in order to serve whose interests? A Chase Bank? How is that possible? And I informed myself about Glass-Steagall, and I informed myself about how Chase was investing in dirty energy. And I said, enough is enough. I'm gonna actually join with my neighbors to push back against that. And guess what? We lost that battle. But I decided, instead of sitting on the sidelines and complaining and critiquing about the Lee administration and these kinds of issues around development and saying, oh, gentrification is happening, and oh, people are being displaced, but we're just gonna complain about it. No, I said, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. I'm gonna dedicate my life to supporting what I want to support, which is inclusive, culturally enriching, and sustainable development in my neighborhood. And that's what I worked on for 4 years. So then last year, it was in December of 2014, that I decided, you know, right now, the way that the media and political insiders are looking at politics in San Francisco is to say that it's a blood sport and a money sport. And so instead of just catering to that and complaining about that, I said, you know what? I'm gonna enter this race. I'm gonna actually run for mayor, and I'm gonna challenge Ed Lee and his administration, and I'm gonna put forth a new way forward about collaborative leadership, because in San Francisco we have ranked choice voting, and that means that you can vote for your top 3 candidates. And it turned out that established candidates stayed out of this race, such as Mark Leno, and you know why? He'll actually tell you. Because his financial analyst said that it wasn't going to be possible for him to beat Ed Lee, or that if he entered, that he would be lambasted in these negative ads. And so I decided not to wait around for a more established candidate to enter. I decided I'm going to enter into this race for a few key reasons. And one of those was to revolutionize democracy in San Francisco. And to say, I want to figure out how we can collaboratively work together in order to analyze the key issues of our time and actually come up with solutions for them. Guess what? I did it. I did it with a lot of the help of the people who are here today. Who voted 1, 2, 3 to replace Ed Lee? Yeah. And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about the media and the democratic process in San Francisco right now. And this is something that Bernie's faced at the national level. After those debates, you know, with Hillary Clinton, CNN was saying that Hillary won. But if you look at the numbers after the debates, we saw that his people for the first time got a chance to hear his message, and his popularity rose after those. But why is CNN reporting that Hillary won? That doesn't make any sense. And so in San Francisco, it was myself and Francisco Herrera and Stuart Shuffman that decided to take a stand for our city together. And the media, even the progressive media, said that Ed Lee was running unopposed the entire time. The Examiner actually put all over the city Ed Lee's face on their front page, and it said no contest. 3 months beforehand, 3 days before the election, no contest. This was in the midst of us building up a grassroots revolution in San Francisco, where we have already over 11,000 people that joined our Vote 123 to replace Ed Lee group. And I talked to literally thousands of people over the last year, and guess what? How many votes that we got? Without any media coverage, with them actually working against us and saying that there was no race. We got 60,000 votes nearly between us. Ed Lee got 90,000. Is that a mandate for Ed Lee? No, not at all. And so what we need to do moving forward, this is the kind of work that I do. I experience something, I go through it, and then I figure out, how do we iterate upon this? How do we heal this system? And so I also went through the Democratic endorsement process. I decided to register as a Democrat, even though I was declined a state before this, because I saw that this was an opportunity for me to speak truth and shine a light on the Democratic clubs in San Francisco. And so when the DCCC of San Francisco, which is right now run by the Real Estate Association and by Airbnb, we need to change that, because they put out their Democratic slate card and they say that they represent the democracy in San Francisco, and a lot of people just look at that and they blindly follow what the DCCC says right now. And so when the DCCC, before candidates even had a chance to enter into this race, back in June, or maybe it was late May, they said they were going to do an early endorsement for Ed Lee. And I got up there in front of the DCCC and all those people, and I said, if you truly believe in the democratic process, you will not do an early endorsement for Ed Lee before you even know who the other candidates are, and you interview them. And so we need to hold the DCCC accountable for any future elections, that before they endorse someone, they have to actually do what their values are, which is participate in democracy. How is it that the DCCC is not doing that right now? So what I did in about, I think it was around July, I decided, I'm gonna frame the top 13 issues that are facing San Francisco, from clean power SF to housing affordability, renting in SF, to clean power, to Black Lives Matter, all of these things. And I framed these top 13 issues, and then I asked people in this open-ended survey, what are your top 3 issues? And then from the 13 that I framed, why don't you go ahead and say if you want this to be a mayoral debate, or if you want there to be a teach-in around this, or there should be a solutions forum around these issues. And I sent that to all the other candidates, including Ed Lee. I sent that to the media. I sent that to all the Democratic clubs and neighborhood organizations. They didn't send it out. But I created a framework through this mayor's race for how we can move forward in San Francisco elections, and even, throughout the Bay Area, we can actually use this framework so that we're not just talking about whether or not a candidate is serious because they have money. We're actually analyzing the issues of our time and working together to co-create solutions. And that's what Bernie Sanders wants. He's saying that, he always says in his speeches, right, that it's really not just gonna be about me getting elected. It's about a political revolution, grassroots style, where people actually start paying attention to the issues of their time and don't just critique the candidates that are running, but participate in creating these solutions. And so that's a real passion of mine, is taking the national and taking it to the neighborhoods. And that's what we all have to do around the issues of our time. The Bay Area is the epicenter of inequity right now. San Francisco is the epicenter of inequity. And we have to be the leaders that we've been waiting for, a la Grace Lee Boggs, am I right? So thank you so much. We have 6 elections coming up for district supervisors in 2016 that'll align with when we vote for Bernie Sanders for president in November. And so let's go ahead and learn from what just happened to us with the media blacking us out because we're just grassroots candidates. And let's make the news. Let's be the news. Let's be the leaders that we've been waiting for. Let's feel the burn.
That was a wonderful speech by Amy Farah Weiss. All right, so next up, we have Karl Knobler. Karl has been a member and activist with the Democratic Socialists of America for the past 20 years. While the DSA does not endorse any particular candidate, its meetings are perhaps the best place possible to get a sense of the philosophy that motivates democratic socialism, the label Bernie Sanders refuses to cower away from. What's more, DSA has worked tirelessly on issues such as healthcare for all, fighting for 15, eco-socialism, and for the rights of the sweatshop and low-wage workers both nationally and internationally.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. I and the members of Democratic Socialists of America salute you, greet you, and I feel exuberant to be here with you right now. This is a wonderful moment, a great beginning for San Francisco and the movement for Bernie. DSA is a child of the 60s. It was begun by Michael Harrington. Michael wrote a book called The Other America, which came from his experience of working with Dorothy Day and the Catholic Workers Movement. And he traveled the country that was flush with money from after the Second World War. And he saw that there was no prosperity for many. The book became a touchstone for John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson as the basis for the war on poverty. Michael saw a country that had so much, but where poor people have been called to go to war and sacrifice, and then came home and had nothing for themselves. Sounds like Vietnam. Sounds like Iraq. Not much change. Black men and women were never treated equally after the war. Before the war, their occupations were not even included in the Social Security Act, and they did not get pensions. Michael Harrington saw trouble in the land. Michael and those who worked with him spent time connecting the dots of our daily struggles. He saw that the United States and the industrialized world had developed an economy based on taking from nature and then destroying it, leaving the dirt and slag behind. In West Virginia, there are now 1/10 of the jobs that were once there, but the hollows between the mountains are being filled with the dirt that had once been on the tops of the mountains. And as Julia Butterfly Hill said, there is no such thing as garbage. When it goes out of your sight, it goes to someone else's sight. It does not disappear, and the earth is but a small spaceship. The poor people of Appalachia once again have their homes sacrificed for a machine that makes products and makes profits for the owners of the machine. That machine is called capitalism. The goal of capitalism at first was to develop a way of breaking the hold of power of the ruling class, the kings and queens. And it was good in the beginning as it began to change social relationships among people, because more money was around for more people, and it was not totally created for the kings and the queens, the lords and the ladies. But as capitalism grew and changed, it has built and built, but has also negatively affected our daily lives at work and at home. It affects your air, your water, and it wants to control the way that people relate to each other. Because money talks. And 98% of the people of this country don't have much of it. The average American family has no more than $25,000 in the bank. That's incredibly little. Look around you. There are people here from lots of different places, and each has a concern that is directly related to his or her personal experience. Each person can tell you a story of a way that someone else is making profit off of his or her life. It could be tuition loans. It could be a job that doesn't pay enough for a reasonable livelihood. It could be the deaths of friends, brothers, sisters, and violent abuse of people of color and the LGBTQ community. It could be the uneven educations of our children and of ourselves, depending on where you live, or the terrible conditions of the places where we live. It could be health care. It could even be the cost of medication. All these costs have a profit margin where simple and basic needs of our lives becomes a means for others to make money. We come to democratic socialism because together, with each other, we all count. And we search for support and ways to create a better, fuller, and healthier life. We can do this through radical democracy in the workplace, democracy at the ballot box, diversity in our lives, to learn and support each other. DSA is an activist organization. We get out on the street and support many different groups as best we can. DSA is also interested in education because we believe that as you connect the dots of violence, of giving our labor, but of not being part of the process of creating social and working environments, that capitalism destroys the humanity in nature and takes over. But socialism also offers another way to imagine what the world might be. And because we believe in radical democracy, we need to educate and motivate people to come together, such as today, and to connect with each other, such as today. Socialism helps us to define what that way might be. And that is particularly important because otherwise we allow the money classes, the billionaire class, says Bernie, to define what our lives are about. What we do have is imagination and each other. Democratic socialism thrives on the use of imagining and working together to create the world that we want to live in. We can do that at work, through unions. We can do that through coming together, like right here. What will a radical democracy look like? Well, no one knows, because it takes you and me talking to each other to figure it out. It can't be known without you being engaged in building it. Transforming the world is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Life is not a spectator sport. It is a process of getting engaged, saying yes to you, yes to us, and yes to Bernie as the best example of someone who wants solidarity among us all. Yes to Bernie. Thank you.
All right, so I have a little question for you. Have you ever wondered if sharing a video with a friend actually makes a difference? Well, after I watched a stirring video about political corruption, I sent it along to my good friend Connor Halleck, who did a lot of the graphic design you see today, the t-shirts and the banner right behind me there. And well, Connor went out and he contacted the local San Francisco chapter of RepresentUs, and now they're here speaking today. So just so you know, even the smallest acts of slacktivism can affect real-world change. Share things with your friends. Tell them about what's going on, because communication is the only way to really get people active. So RepresentUs is a national movement to help end corruption in the United States. This growing movement aims to clean up Congress the only way that it'll work, by bypassing it entirely. Here are Adam Klein and Morgan Aitken Young of RepresentUs San Francisco.
Hi everybody,
Thank you, Connor, so much for sharing our video. Thank you to all of the organizers here today, and thank you especially to all of you to coming out and supporting this great cause today. My name is Adam Klein, and together with my friend Morgan Aitken Young and a small team of passionate professionals, I helped start the San Francisco chapter of RepresentUs, a movement to end corruption and big money in politics. All of us are volunteers. I do strategic planning for a homeless shelter nonprofit, and Morgan is a marketing consultant for a technology company. We are a diverse, nonpartisan group with one important commonality. We believe that nothing matters more than fixing our broken, corrupt system of government. I want to take a moment first to celebrate a few big victories for our movement to fix our corrupt political system. On Tuesday, we won important ballot initiatives in Maine, Seattle, and right here in San Francisco. In fact, every single ballot initiative that RepresentUs has ever brought to the people has passed with widespread and bipartisan support. The people have spoken and the message is clear. We want clean elections. We want to crack down on lobbying, and we want transparency, and we want to have a voice in our elections. When we get the chance to vote on these initiatives, they pass. Every time. Prop C in San Francisco is one small step, but the 75% approval by all of you shows we are moving in the right direction. This is how we win the fight against corruption, by passing laws at home that protect our communities and build momentum for national reform. When I was in the first grade, my teacher taught me that we live in a democracy where my vote matters in determining the policies that we all live by, or would when I turned 18. The problem is that my teacher lied to me. When you vote for a candidate taking money from super PACs and big money, your vote doesn't matter. A recent study by Princeton and Northwestern universities found that the preferences of the average American appear to have a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. And that was a quote. You know why that is, and I know why that is. As my grandfather would say, money talks, bullshit walks. 91% of the time in congressional elections, the candidate with the most money wins the election. On average, the winning candidate spends $23 million, and the losing candidate, $1.1 million. If you would like to lose a congressional election, it costs you over $1 million to lose the election. When it takes that much money to run, candidates have no choice but to ask billionaires for a favor. And when billionaires give a favor, billionaires get a favor. That's just the way it works. In a 5-year period, 200 corporations spent $5.8 billion on lobbying and campaigns and got a return on investment from taxpayer dollars of $4.4 trillion. Trillion, with a T. That is a 76,000% return on investment. 76,000% return on investment. As Donald Trump says, that's just good business. If you're rich, you can afford an army of lobbyists and fund politicians' campaigns and pour money into a super PAC. You get a better version of government than everybody else. You get tax breaks, you get special loopholes, and you get a bailout when you cause a global financial meltdown. It flies right in the face of everything we've been taught this country is supposed to stand for, and it pisses me off. If you're like me, you can't believe that it's often easier to get a gun than birth control. If you're like me, you can't believe that we put more black men in prison than we send to colleges and universities. And if you're like me,
You can't believe that we spend $700 billion bailing out the banks while students in our country hold $1.2 trillion of student loan debts. But what really pisses me off is that any one of these issues, no matter how many people support reform, will ever change as long as big money is allowed to corrupt politics. If we don't fix this one overwhelming issue, we can't fix anything else. The proof is in the pudding. The current Congress has been one of the least productive and least representative of average Americans in our country's history. Do you care about climate change? Great. You'll reduce, you'll reuse, and you'll recycle. But if the oil and gas industry wants a tax break, and they always want a tax break, they'll spend $145 million on lobbying like they did in 2014 to ensure that all your reducing, all your reusing, and all your recycling will mean absolutely nothing compared to the damage they'll cause to the environment. Whatever issue you care about, however loud you scream, regardless of how many other average Americans are on your side, big money, as long as it's allowed to be bartered with in politics, will always scream louder. Put yourself in the place of a politician for a moment. You're a congressman or a senator. You want to do right by your constituents. That's what they put you in office to do. You also want to keep your job, because how can you serve your constituents if you can't win an election? A bill, let's say a bill requiring background checks on all gun owners comes up for a vote. Now, keep in mind, 93% of all Americans, including 90% of Republicans, support a background check on gun owners. 93%. Now, as you make your way to the floor to pass your bill, the friendly lobbyist from the NRA reminds you that if you even so much as think about passing this bill, we will spend every dollar that we need to spend to defeat you. And they will spend that money, and you will lose. So now, you have a genuinely difficult decision to make. Do you stake? Is gun control, is this one issue, is this one vote worth your entire political career? Is it worth everything that you've been working towards? You may be working on healthcare, education, bringing jobs to your constituents, and all of that can be undone by one rogue vote. So what do? That's the power of money in politics. And it's not just the NRA. Every issue has billionaires on both sides with money that can decide winners and decide losers of your next election based on how they vote on policy. So do you blame the politicians? You can. That's fair. It's easy to do. It's fair to be angry at them. And there are very few, like Bernie Sanders, who are able to stand up to big money and not take money from super PACs. But even good, honest people can be corrupted by a corrupt system. And our system, it's corrupt. It's broken. Completely, 100% broken.
But Adam, we are winning. We are fixing the broken system.
Morgan, what about Citizens United? It's unrealistic to overturn it with a constitutional amendment, and with it being the letter of the law, how can we ever fix the system?
That is one of the biggest myths in modern politics. If you think that stopping money from corrupting our government is impossible, you're not alone. But the good news is, you're wrong. The reality is that most practices that allow lobbyists and special interests to essentially buy politicians actually predate Citizens United. But this is the good news. We can outlaw corruption. We're already outlawing corruption at the city and state level by changing and enforcing anti-corruption laws. If we get organized, stay organized, and pick smart battles, we can work together to pass these laws in cities, states, and eventually Washington, D.C. For anyone who thinks this sounds crazy, I'd say this. Don't believe the lie that change is impossible. We're already winning. As Adam mentioned, just this past Tuesday, we had 3 huge victories. Regular people in Maine, Seattle, and right here in San Francisco took matters into their own hands by gathering enough signatures to go around the politicians, putting comprehensive reforms right on the ballot. And they won. In San Francisco, the prop passed with 75% in favor. That's huge. So, to give you guys some details, in Maine, voters passed a statewide law to revitalize their historic Clean Elections Act. This imposes strict new penalties on special interests that break election laws. They also increased transparency of political money. In Seattle, voters approved a sweeping measure to limit campaign contributions from interests that spend significant funds lobbying the city. They made it illegal for city officials to take lobbying jobs immediately after leaving office. Why doesn't that exist already? And create an innovative system of citizen-funded elections, which I know a lot of people here are really excited about. This makes it possible for regular people to run for office without having to play the big money fundraising game. And then, of course, right here in San Francisco, voters approved a measure to end secret lobbying in city politics. And this lays the groundwork for future anti-corruption reform. This passed by a whopping 3-to-1 margin. So 3 significant reforms were passed with bipartisan support. This reflects that 97% of Americans are in favor of anti-corruption legislation. The first Anti-Corruption Act passed in Tallahassee was actually championed by a Tea Party Republican, a Libertarian, and a Democrat. So this is not about right versus left. This is not about being divisive. It's about special interests versus the 99.8% of U.S. citizens that can't afford a lobbyist. So, when 0.2% of our country provides 2/3 of political donations, we must remember this. The only thing that can beat organized money is organized people. The other 99.8% has to step up. We have to organize, or we can just accept that, of course, our politicians are going to pass laws in the interests of big money. I'll say it again. The only thing that can beat organized money is organized people. So we're so excited to see you guys all out here organizing today. So we are winning. These local victories are the most promising avenue for national reform. This has happened over the past decade with grassroots activists on both sides having success in the marriage equality movement, marijuana legalization. These are issues that start at the local level. So when progress doesn't come from Washington, it has to come from us. RepresentUs is leading the way in San Francisco and in 40 other cities across the country. You can be a part of this movement. This is the defining issue of our time. Our country needs us, and we need all of you. So come visit our table. A lot of you guys already have. Talk to us about taking action. You can find us online at facebook.com/repussf or search Represent Us San Francisco. We would love to connect with each and every single one of you. But just to share a little personal side, I've never felt so invested in this movement as I do since I started this chapter. The pattern in political engagement that I see amongst my peers is frustration with the system, which leads to apathy and an attitude of, the system is broken, so I will not participate. But the problem is, the choice to not participate is still influencing the system. It's feeding corruption, and it's undermining real change. When our votes are no longer heard and no longer count, We have to turn to grassroots activism to make sure that our voices are heard. If they won't listen at the federal level, we have to show up at the local level. We have to channel our frustration and disillusionment with the system into action rather than apathy. There are a few candidates, like Bernie, who are able to run without taking big money. But Bernie should be the rule, not the exception. If the only way to fight organized money is with organized citizens, we ask you to join us and to organize. The voices of the American people must be held equal to the voices of the 0.2%. So join us in restoring this equality and returning democracy to the people. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Come find us. We're serious about talking to you, and we're serious about you joining us. Thank you. All right. So next up, we have Shira Dedman, and she's an activist and an expert in the business of film. A Los Angeles native, she attended Pepperdine University and received a law degree from USC. Her career in entertainment began as a child actor, and later she worked at the famed William Morris Talent Agency in content acquisitions with DirecTV and in film sales with Paramount Pictures. But the end of her career in corporate America has marked the beginning of a whole new life. She recently relocated to Oakland to begin her work on a documentary and her new life's work, Corporate to Cooperative, her plan to help others snatch life from the jaws of corporate conformity. Shira Dedman.
Hey you guys, thanks for showing up. I'm also volunteering with doing this Periscope live streaming, which literally just crashed. So, anybody else who is hooked up to Periscope, please stream. You can wait till after me, I don't care. I just want to let you guys know it's down for the people who are live streaming from home. I know, if anybody can do it. That's all right. All right, cool. Sorry about that. I would also like to say that thanks everybody for showing up. This is a grassroots actions, which means it's all about connections, connecting to people, connecting to the little man. So please take the time right now to say hello to whoever's next to you, because again, this is about, you know, connections, connecting to everyone around us. So I know you guys are strangers. Go ahead, say hi. Say hi. That's right. Hello. Let everybody know to connect to, I guess, NF West Coast Twitter handle. And I would also like to say I'm really glad to be up here as an African American woman, because I'm tired of mainstream media lying and saying blacks don't vote for, are not going to vote for Bernie. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of them putting us all in a box and trying to define who we are. Because I'm up here and I'm going to vote for Bernie. Equality. Some think we've reached it already. However, studies clearly demonstrate that on job applications and mortgage applications, the names Jamal and Onisha and Peter and Paul are still often not treated equal, even if they were created that way. Politicians in blue like to use the word equality, but what do they mean by it? With this word, they lead us around by the nose, and to where? Well, I'm here to tell you the pursuit of some kinds of equality can be a very bad thing. That's right. Equality is not always good. And you young people, if you indiscriminately pursue equal opportunity at all costs, you might find one day you spent your whole life climbing up a ladder only to realize it was placed against the wrong wall. Part of my life was spent climbing that ladder, and I climbed. But I'm here before you to tell you, if equality is just about the chance to go to the best law school or the best business school, to become a high-powered lawyer or a corporate executive, you can keep it. If achieving equality means choosing the illusion of power over my principles, I don't want it. And even the presidency, if it means the culture and economy of the elite to dominate the rest of humanity, That's not for me. Fighting for that delusion is the problem, not the solution, regardless of whether I'm a woman of color or not. I don't want equality where the measure of success is as homogeneous and unhealthy as a 1,000-acre field of corn when it's a promise as empty as 40 acres and a mule. I don't want that for myself, for my community, for my country, or for the world. I want a culture and economy that's as rich as a forest ecosystem, where these beautiful individuals speaking today and all of you can pursue your own good and work authentically. An economy where helping yourself and your neighbor and the world are one and the same. And you don't have to worry the whole thing will be destroyed by the monoculture of greed. I believe it's the role of government to foster this healthy growth and to safeguard the kind of equality that appreciates the strength and wealth of cultural and economic diversity. And this is why I support Bernie Sanders for president. Go Bernie, feel the burn! I believe Bernie is a good-natured, intelligent human being who will rally behind that kind of diversity if we rally around him. So while I have my own personal course of activism, which I invite you all to follow at corp2coop.com, I'm also excited to stand alongside you in our collective activism, our grassroots revolution, and say enough is enough.
All right. Our next speaker is a retired teacher who now works at the Media Mobilizers at Flush the TPP, an action campaign to stop the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a trade deal that almost exclusively benefits giant transnational corporations. A fighter for the interests of the people and the environment, Leslie Christianer.
It is so good to be here with you. I love San Francisco. And it feels so good to join with you as we come together to take back our country.
Yeah.
But let me tell you what else I'm feeling today. I am feeling TPP pissed. And I want to tell you why. Now, I know many of you don't know about the TPP, and there's a reason for that. It has been negotiated in unprecedented secrecy, and there's been a virtual blackout by mainstream media. So I'm just going to give you a brief intro. So TPP stands for Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is the world's largest trade deal, and it's between the United States and 11 countries around the Pacific Rim. So that includes countries like Canada, Mexico, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam, Chile, and others. So it covers 11% of the world population and 40% of the global GDP. It's been negotiated over 6 years. And this is where it gets a little interesting. Over 500 corporate agents had a hand in those negotiations. So these were lobbyists from Goldman Sachs, Monsanto, Halliburton, Time Warner, ExxonMobil, Pfizer, and more. Now, let me just give you a little reminder. A corporation's main objective is to protect and maximize profits, even if it's to the detriment of people and the environment. So keep that in mind. So let's see. We've got unprecedented secrecy and corporate lobbyists helping to write this deal. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the text of the TPP was released last Thursday. Fortunately, there were experts on hand from various watchdog groups, and they were able to jump in and try to dissect the TPP's complicated legal jargon. And this was the consensus later. It was worse than we thought. So they discovered the text is over 6,000 pages long. And by the way, if you want to read it, you can go online. But only a small portion of this so-called trade deal actually deals with traditional trade issues. The rest can be described as an enormous power grab by some of the world's largest multinational corporations. Some have even characterized this as the next step in a global corporate coup. So I'm just going to touch on a few of the ways the TPP is going to impact your lives. First of all, we lost over 700,000 jobs over the last 20 years from NAFTA. Well, guess what? Under the TPP, we're going to lose even more jobs. Wages will be depressed. I mean, let's face it, we have workers trying to compete with other workers in, for example, Vietnam, making less than 65 cents an hour. We're going to be opening up our borders. We'll be reducing or eliminating our tariffs. Now, apparently, this doesn't deal with the VAT, the value-added tax, that they were hoping it would, or currency manipulation in a meaningful way. So, all of this may be really good for big corporations, but it is not going to benefit us. So, there's something else that we're going to have to deal with under the TPP. Now, normally when you hear the word harmonization, I mean, it sounds like a beautiful thing, right? Harmonization. But this is regulatory harmonization, or sometimes called regulatory coherence. And what this means is the countries that are part of this TPP, they're going to be forced to reduce their regulatory standards to the lowest common denominator. So under this harmonization, the safety of products we use every day will be jeopardized, and food labeling, like, I don't know if you know of the COOL Act, country of origin labeling, things like that will be going away. Workers' protections, like wages and working conditions, all of these things will now be jeopardized under the TPP. Food quality. According to the agents that dug through, there's a new policy called the Rapid Response Mechanism. And this gives countries like Vietnam and Malaysia the right to challenge our inspection of the food they're sending over to us. So how are we going to be sure that the food that's coming in is going to be safe? So the TPP has other threats that have to do with intellectual property. And these cover things like patents, trademarks, and copyrights. So we now know Big Pharma has worked really hard to protect their monopolies of medicines. And they're doing this by lengthening the terms of their patents and putting restrictions on generics. In other words, they are limiting access to life-saving treatments in order to maximize profits. So other intellectual issues deal with the internet. The TPP requires internet service providers to monitor and report online usage if it relates to copyrighted images. Individual violators can be treated just as harshly as major for-profit violators. So obviously this is going to stifle freedom of expression and our right to privacy. Okay, now I want to talk about one of the most insidious provisions that has actually been expanded under the TPP. And this is one most people have never heard of, but it is a direct attack on our democratic principles and our sovereignty. It's called the Investor State Dispute Settlement System, or ISDS. Under this system, if a foreign or multinational corporation feels that there's a law or a regulation, and this could be at the local level all the way up to the national level. So if they feel this law cuts into their future profits, the corporation can sue the government for compensation. But this case is not going to be heard in a regular domestic court. No. This case is going to be heard in an international tribunal headed by 3 unelected corporate agents. Now, these corporate agents, sometimes lawyers, can alternate. Sometimes they act as counsel for corporations, and other times they act as judges on this tribunal. So, first of all, these lawsuits can be extremely expensive for a government to defend. And if the government loses, taxpayers, that's you and me, taxpayers will be on the hook to compensate the corporations for lost profit. Now this can mean millions and millions of dollars, and guess what? There is no outside appeal. So naturally, this is going to have a chilling effect on legislation that we want to put in place. For example, let's say people come together and finally win the right to label GMOs. A multinational corporation could challenge that, saying that those GMO labels will cut into their profits. And that lawsuit will be heard in one of these secret ISDS tribunals overseen by corporate attorneys. What do you think is going to happen? So I want to get just a couple of ISDS cases that are already underway, and these are really happening. There's a Swedish nuclear company named Vattenfall. They're currently suing Germany for 4.7 billion euros because Germany decided to phase out their nuclear program after the Fukushima disaster. The French company Veolia is currently suing Egypt because Egypt raised its minimum wage. Now, I'm going to go off script a little bit because I need to add something here. According to environmentalists, there is no mention of climate change in the TPP. Can you believe it? 6,000 pages and there's no mention of climate change? Scientists and environmentalists are really concerned that any policy that's proposed at the conference that's coming up at the end of the month, any of that policy can be challenged by these trade agreements. So, now you know why I'm TPP pissed. And you know who else is sounding the alarm on this? Bernie Sanders. But we cannot wait for Bernie to stop this. The clock is ticking. According to the fast-track legislation that was passed last June, we will have at least 90 days before Congress gets to vote on that. So it could happen this spring. There's also speculation that Congress will vote during the lame duck session after the election next November, a year from now. And just as a reminder, Congress only gets to vote up or down. They cannot change one word of this deal. So, what does that mean? That means it is up to us to stop this. We need to educate ourselves, and some of us need to get out of their comfort zone and maybe do some things you have never done before. Because we cannot count on the media. We are the media. So it's up to us to put pressure on our senators and our members of Congress. And as a matter of fact, Congress is out of session and they may be in district this coming week. Now I want to, as a little aside, according to Ralph Nader, a face-to-face meeting with your members of Congress is the most effective way of influencing their vote. So we need to meet with them face-to-face or write a handwritten letter and deliver it. I've heard that a handwritten letter is worth 100 emails. So, I want to actually give you a link to a website, to a group I belong to. I belong to flushthetpp.org. So here we go, flushthetpp.org. Remember that. They have a lot of great resources to help you, not only to get educated, but, you know, templates, you know, things you can print up and hand out to people or write letters. This group comes out of Popular Resistance. I don't know if you have heard of that group, but they are having a huge rally in Washington, D.C. If there's any way you can get there, this is going to be huge. We have 90 days, maybe more, to stop it, and this is up to us. The time is now, and we don't have a moment to waste. Thank you.
Those people with the TPP are suing Uruguay because Uruguay wants to put labels on the cigarettes that they sell to Uruguay that say it may cause cancer. So they're trying to prevent that law from being implemented. This is the kind of power that the TPP has when or if it is passed, and it's really an incredibly bad piece of trade agreement. They can even sue the American Indian tribes. If they're working with tribes on natural resources or any kind of product, they can come in and sue the American Indian tribes. So this has implications from the federal, the state, the regional, and the tribal level. So
It is something that everyone has to put their effort to stop. I thank Ms. Christian for that nice discussion and the legal process of it. I'd like to introduce you now to our next speaker, and she knows this and is trying to keep our young people in that transformation of conscious and subconsciousness. Paloma Flores is a member of the Northern California Indian tribe, Pit River Nation. She's an educator and administrator for the San Francisco Unified School District and runs the Indian Education Program, which serves American Indian Alaskan Native students K-12 and their families. She manages empowerment and wellness programs which support successful community outcomes. Ms. Flores is an activist and voice for her people. She's an artist, a poet, a peace and dignity journey intercontinental runner, a dancer, and only daughter. Please join me in welcoming Paloma Flores.
Hello, San Francisco. Come on now. Enough is enough. Ya basta. Hello, San Francisco. Chamisamwe. Doloka. Itu. Kata. Hello. My name is Paloma Flores. I represent the Pit River Nation of Northern California, nestled in the mountains between Mount Lassen and Mount Shasta. My band is Madesi. We are of Medicine Lake, fighting to protect that sacred site every day, not just for the use of the indigenous communities from all over Northern California that come to access that healing place, but for all peoples of this world. You are here today, not just only because you want to be here, but because you are meant to be here. You are alive today because this is the time of change. This is the time of awakening. This is the time to pay attention. Had it not been for the organizers who put this together, none of us would be here at this moment. Had it not been for the people who put that thought out there, that in San Francisco, Land's End, the end of the world, we would hold the beginning of the world because the beginning is near. I want to have one moment, each and every one of you, from the right all the way through the left, far out into the cosmos, to stop. Close your eyes for one moment, please. Close your eyes for one moment, please. It's okay. I know it's scary, but it's important. As you close your eyes, and I'll do the same, I just want to give thanks to the original peoples here of this Turtle Island, of this San Francisco Bay Area, the Ohlone Nation. To all of those ancestors and relatives who were here first and who are still here. In order to have a democracy, you cannot have a true democracy if someone cannot read. Gone are the days of factory lines, logging, fishing as a means to provide. We are in a time when your skills are your way to your meals. Without college and a way to pay for higher education, it is difficult to exist in this ever-changing world where you have access to information at the palms of your hands. A quick swipe left, a click, and there you go. But you are still without knowledge. We all learn differently. Science has taught us this. We see this in our children's eyes every day from K through 12. We all learn differently. Access and equity. It is 2015, is it not? Have we not turned the new millennium 15 years ago? Have we not been a part of something bigger than our own existence? Have we not been in this time? Have you not felt the call? You can find yourself. You can find yourself in a book. You can find yourself in each other. But if you hadn't the chance to look, then those connections are lost. And forever, they're unknowns. Unknowns. How many go into college with the idea of what they'll study, and they end up changing their majors? How many of you went to college with that idea, this is what I'm gonna do with my life? And it changed. May I see you raise your hand? Because it changes always. That is our constant change. When you go to college, you're introduced to many new things, many new people, many new ideas. Your mind is opened, your hearts expand, your bodies change. Times are changing. So what if you never had that opportunity to go and take a class and have your whole trajectory change because you found what interests you, what spoke to you? What is a degree? But the proven ability to speak and be heard. I'm standing here today in front of you. Had it not been for my education at the University of California, Berkeley, go Bears! I wouldn't know how to pull these words and write them on a piece of paper and share them with you, had it not been for that opportunity. The degree is a verification to future employers that by having that degree, you have the ability to complete something, to see something through. Also, it shows the world that you also have the ability to work with other people. You remember the group projects. You remember what it was like to take a role in a group of people that were once strangers. And by the time you came through that experience together, you were no longer strangers, you were family. You were colleagues, you were friends. Relationships were built off of a focus point. If you do not have the skills to work with other people in this world, it is a crucial skill to have in this thriving society of many differences, histories, cultures, and peoples. Then you will not work with the world, and the world is here. Look around, look around. San Francisco, California is the world. And how many people have to learn to work in this one world? This 7 by 7, this land's end, this beginning. A degree is access to information. Facilities where you can learn, further the cause, push the envelope, develop the next cure. But without, you can be the most brilliant person in the world and never get a chance to change the world. We are a nation of nations. Each one of you here wanted to be here in the land of opportunity, the land of we, yet we are not succeeding. We are failing each other, one another. Every time the cost of learning rises out of the reach of the people, when knowledge should be given, it has been privatized. We, the people, are awake. It is a time of awakening. We are living in a prophesized time. If there is no free education, there is no competitive advantage. Other countries offer free education, Other countries are leading in health, education, and even safety. Yet, we as a nation claim to be the #1 superpower. Yet we as a nation are not competing with the world. The world is beating us. We have to be educated in order to get a job, because without education, you're left without options, little to none. The economy will not improve without people being able to improve their conditions. So the time is now. It is just an act until you put motion to it, a call for action. Doloka tus adache. Say it with me. Tus adache. Tus adache. Tus adache. A change is coming. We are all a part of it. Free education for all means the world moves forward and we go with it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful.